I was standing in Dante Moretti's private study at 3 in the morning, my hand shaking, and I knew that if I told him the truth about where I'd been tonight, he would either lock me in this mansion forever or kill me himself. Emma. His voice was quiet, the kind of quiet that made grown men confess to crimes they hadn't committed. He stood by the window overlooking the city, his back to me, one hand in the pocket of his perfectly tailored pants. I'm going to ask you one more time, where were you? My throat closed. I could still smell the gasoline on my clothes, still feel the weight of what I'd done pressing against my ribs like a stone. I told you I couldn't sleep. I went for a walk. He turned then, and the look in his eyes made my breath catch. Dante Moretti wasn't just handsome. He was the kind of beautiful that felt dangerous, like staring at the sun. Dark hair swept back from a face that could have been carved from marble, sharp jawline, and eyes so dark they looked black in the low light. But it was the intelligence in those eyes that terrified me. He saw everything. He knew everything. "You're lying to me," he said softly. "And I don't like being lied to, Emma. Especially not by you." I wanted to run. Every instinct screamed at me to bolt for the door, to get as far from this man and his world as possible. But I'd learned 3 months ago that running from Dante Moretti was pointless. He would find me. He always found me. "I'm not lying," I whispered, even though we both knew I was. He crossed the room toward me with the predatory grace of a big cat, and I forced myself to stand still. When he reached me, he didn't touch me. He never touched me without asking first. Which somehow made him more terrifying, not less. He just looked down at me with those impossible eyes and said, "Then why do you smell like smoke?" My heart stopped. 3 months earlier, I'd been nobody, just another girl, trying to survive in a city that chewed people up and spit them out. I lived in a studio apartment in the worst part of Brooklyn, with walls so thin I could hear my neighbors fighting every night. I worked 3 jobs, waitressing, had a diner during breakfast, cleaning offices in the evening, and picking up whatever odd shifts I could find on weekends. None of it was enough. My little sister Lily was sick, leukemia. The bills were drowning me. I'd sold everything I owned, maxed out credit cards I shouldn't have qualified for, and borrowed money from people I shouldn't have talked to. Nothing helped. The debt kept growing, and Lily kept getting sicker, and I kept running faster on a treadmill that was designed to throw me off. I was 23 years old, and I was dying slowly in a city that didn't care. The night everything changed started like any other night. I'd just finished my cleaning shift at the Palazzo Hotel, one of those impossibly expensive places in Manhattan, where even the air felt rich. I was in the back service hallway, hauling my cart of supplies toward the storage room, when I heard voices. Male voices. Angry ones. I should have kept walking. Should have minded my own business like I'd learned to do years ago in the foster system. But one of the voices sounded young. Scared, and before I could think better of it, I found myself edging closer to the corner, trying to see without being seen. 3 men stood in the hallway near the private elevator. 2 of them were huge, dressed in black suits that screamed security or worse. The third was smaller, maybe 19 or 20, with blood running down his face from a cut above his eye. "Please," the young man was saying, his voice breaking. "I'll pay it back. I just need more time." "You had time," one of the suited men said. His voice was flat, empty. "Mr. Moretti doesn't give 3rd chances." My breath caught. Everyone in New York knew the name Moretti. You didn't work in hotels or restaurants or anywhere near money without hearing whispers. The Moretti family owned half of Manhattan, the legal half, and the illegal half. They were old money, new money, and blood money all wrapped together. And Dante Moretti, the current head of the family, was a ghost story people told in hushed voices. Beautiful, brilliant, absolutely ruthless. "Please," the young man begged again. "My sister, she needs." The punch came so fast I almost didn't see it. The young man crumpled, and I bit down hard on my hand to keep from making a sound. The 2 suited men grabbed him, one on each arm, and started dragging him toward the private elevator. That's when I did the stupidest thing I'd ever done in my entire stupid life. "Wait!" My voice came out stronger than I felt. I stepped around the corner, my cleaning cart squeaking on the marble floor. "Wait, please." All three men turned to look at me. The young man's eyes went wide with something that looked like hope mixed with horror. The two suited men just looked at me like I was an insect. They hadn't decided whether to squash yet. "This doesn't concern you," one of them said. He had a scar running down his left cheek and eyes like ice chips. "Keep moving." I should have, God, I should have, but all I could think about was Lily. About being 19 and scared and desperate, about how nobody had helped us when our parents died and the state split us up into different foster homes, about how alone this kid looked. "How much does he owe?" I asked. The scarred man's eyes narrowed. "What? How much does he owe?" I repeated, my heart hammering so hard I could feel it in my throat. "Mr. Moretti." "How much money?" "50,000, the other man said. He sounded almost amused. "You got $50,000, sweetheart? I didn't. I didn't have $50, let alone 50,000. But I opened my mouth anyway and said, "What if I work it off? I'll work for Mr. Moretti until the debt is paid. This kid is just a kid. He made a mistake, but I'll work for it. I'll do whatever. Emma Martinez." The new voice came from behind me, and it made my blood turn to ice water, deep, smooth, the kind of voice that could order your execution and make it sound like an invitation to dinner. I turned slowly. Dante Moretti stood in the hallway like he'd materialized from shadows. He wore a black suit that probably cost more than my entire year's salary, a white shirt open at the collar, and an expression of mild curiosity that somehow felt more dangerous than anger. He was taller than I'd expected from the photographs I'd seen online. Easily 6'2" or 6'3" with broad shoulders and the kind of presence that made the whole hallway feel smaller. But it was his eyes that froze me in place, dark, intelligent, and completely unreadable. They swept over me once, taking in my stained work uniform and cheap sneakers and the way I was shaking, and something flickered in their depths. Interest, maybe, or amusement. "You're Emma Martinez," he said again. It wasn't a question. "You've been cleaning this hotel for 6 months. You're never late. You don't steal. You keep your head down." He took a step closer, and I found myself backing up until I hit my cleaning cart. "So what are you doing offering to work off a debt for a degenerate gambler who owes me money he'll never have?" My mouth was dry. "He's young. He made a mistake." "He made 3 mistakes, Dante corrected softly. "I gave him 2 chances already. That's more than most people get. Please." I hated how small my voice sounded. "I'll work it off. I'll do anything. Just don't." I looked at the bleeding young man. "Just don't hurt him anymore." Dante studied me for a long moment, then he said something in Italian to the 2 suited men. They immediately released the young man, who slumped against the wall looking dazed and confused. Dante turned back to me. "You want to work off his debt?" "Yes. Do you understand what $50,000 of work means, Emma?" I swallowed hard. "I'll do whatever it takes." Something that might have been a smile touched the corner of his mouth. It wasn't a kind smile. "All right, come with me. Wait, what about my shift? I have to finish." "Your shift is over," Dante said. "You work for me now." And that's how my life ended and a new one began. All because I couldn't keep my mouth shut and my head down like I'd learned to do years ago. Dante's private penthouse was on the top floor of the Palazzo Hotel. The elevator ride up took less than a minute, but it felt like hours. He stood on one side of the elevator. I stood on the other. And the 2 suited men whose names I learned were Marco and Vincent stood behind us in silence. Nobody spoke. I could feel Dante watching me in the reflective surface of the elevator doors. But I kept my eyes straight ahead, trying to control my breathing. What had I just done? What had I just agreed to? The elevator opened directly into the penthouse, and despite my fear, I couldn't help staring. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked Manhattan, making the city look like a carpet of stars. The space was modern and minimalist, all clean lines, dark wood, and leather furniture that probably cost more than I'd make in 10 years. Art that I suspected was original hung on the walls. "Sit," Dante said, gesturing to a leather sofa near the windows. I sat. He remained standing, pouring himself something amber from a crystal decanter on the bar. He didn't offer me anything. Do you know who I am, Emma? He asked without turning around. Yes. Then you know what I do, what my family does. My hands were clenched so tight in my lap that my nails were cutting into my palms. Yes, and you still offered to work off a stranger's debt. He turned now, drink in hand, and looked at me with those unsettling dark eyes. Why? I thought about lying, about giving him some noble answer about doing the right thing. But something in his gaze told me he'd see through it, so I told the truth. My little sister is sick. When our parents died, nobody helped us. Nobody cared. That kid tonight, he reminded me of her, of being young and desperate and alone. Dante was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, your sister, Lily Martinez, 14 years old, acute lymphoblastic leukemia. She's at Mount Sinai Hospital right now. He took a sip of his drink. You owe $47,000 in medical bills. You have $3,000 in credit card debt. You're 2 months behind on rent. Your landlord is threatening eviction. I felt like I'd been punched. How do you... I know everything about everyone who works in my buildings, Emma. It's my business to know. He set his glass down and moved closer, stopping a few feet away. So here's what's going to happen. You offered to work off $50,000. I'm going to add your sister's medical bills to that. Call it $97,000 total. My stomach dropped. $97,000. I'd never pay that off. Not in 5 years. Maybe not in 10. You'll live here, Dante continued. You'll cook, clean, and handle whatever household tasks I need done. You'll be available at all hours. You don't leave this building without my permission. And you don't talk to anyone about your work here. In exchange, your sister's medical bills are paid in full, your debts are cleared, and you earn room and board plus $2,000 a month that I'll apply directly to the balance. $2,000 a month. At that rate, it would take me 4 years to work off the debt. 4 years as a prisoner in this golden cage. What if I say no? I whispered. Dante's expression didn't change. Then the young man you tried to save tonight dies. Your sister's hospital payments stop. Your landlord evicts you, and you go back to drowning in a system designed to keep you underwater. He paused. But you won't say no, Emma, because you're the kind of person who throws herself between sharks and smaller fish. You'll say yes, and you'll mean it, because that's who you are. He was right. God help me, he was right. I'll do it, I said. Good. He picked up his drink again. Marco will show you to your room. You start tomorrow morning at 6. Don't be late. I stood on shaking legs and followed Marco out of the living room. At the doorway, I turned back. Dante was standing by the windows now, looking out at the city, his shoulders tense beneath his expensive suit. Why are you doing this? I asked. Why help me at all? You could have just ignored me tonight. He didn't turn around. I haven't decided yet if I'm helping you or hurting you, Emma. Ask me again in a few months. The room Marco showed me to was nicer than any place I'd ever lived. A real bed with clean sheets, a private bathroom, a closet with clothes that actually fit me. Someone must have guessed my size. When I was alone, I sat on the edge of the bed and cried quietly into my hands, trying to process what I'd just done. I'd sold myself to a monster to save a stranger and my sister. And the worst part was, I didn't regret it. The first week passed in a blur. I woke at 5:30 every morning, showered, and started work by 6. Dante kept irregular hours. Sometimes he was there for breakfast, sometimes he disappeared for days. When he was home, he was quiet and tense and terrifying in the way that predators are terrifying. Not because they're always attacking, but because you know they could at any moment. He never yelled, never threatened. He just looked at me with those dark eyes and spoke in that soft, precise voice, and I found myself scrambling to meet every expectation. But he was also fair. When I asked to visit Lily at the hospital, he said yes without hesitation and sent Marco with me in one of his cars. When I accidentally broke an expensive vase, he just told me to be more careful, and never mentioned it again. When I got sick with a terrible cold, he had a doctor come to the penthouse instead of making me work through it. It was confusing, disorienting. How could someone be both a crime lord and The second week, I started to notice things. The way he always made sure there was food I liked in the kitchen. The way he never came into my room without knocking. The way he spoke to me. Not as a servant exactly, but not quite as an equal either. Something in between. And I started to notice him. The way he moved with unconscious grace. The way his rare smiles transformed his entire face. The way he looked in the morning with his shirt sleeves rolled up and his hair slightly mussed, drinking espresso and reading the news on his tablet. I tried not to notice. Tried not to feel anything except gratitude and wariness. But it was like trying not to notice a storm coming inevitable and dangerous and impossible to ignore. The third week, everything shifted. It was late past midnight. I couldn't sleep, so I'd come out to the kitchen to make tea. I didn't expect anyone else to be awake. But when I walked into the living room, I found Dante standing by the windows in the dark. "I'm sorry," I said quietly. "I didn't mean to disturb you." "You didn't." He didn't turn around. "Can't sleep?" "No." I hesitated. "You either?" "I rarely sleep. I should have taken my tea and gone back to my room." Instead, I found myself walking closer, drawn by something I couldn't name. "Why not?" "Ghosts," he said simply. I understood that. I had my own ghosts: my parents' car accident, the foster homes, the years of being hungry and scared and alone. "The price of survival," I said softly. Now he did turn to look at me, in the darkness with the city lights behind him. He looked like something carved from shadow. "You understand. More than I want to." We stood there in silence for a long moment. Then he asked, "Are you afraid of me, Emma?" The honest answer was yes. But it wasn't the only answer. Sometimes, but not the way I'm afraid of most things. "What does that mean?" I chose my words carefully. "Most things I'm afraid of want to hurt me or use me. You're dangerous, but you're not. Cruel. Not randomly. There are rules with you. Structure. As long as I follow the rules, I'm safe." Something flickered in his expression. "And if you break the rules, then I deserve whatever happens." He moved closer, and my breath caught. He still didn't touch me, but I could feel the heat of him. Smell his cologne, something dark and expensive. "You're not what I expected," he said quietly. "Neither are you." "I'm exactly what you should expect, Emma. Don't forget that." But his voice was gentle when he said it, almost sad. "Go to bed. Tomorrow will be a long day." I went, but I lay awake for hours afterward, thinking about the loneliness I'd seen in his eyes, and wondering what ghosts haunted a man like Dante Moretti. The next few weeks fell into a rhythm. I worked, visited Lily at the hospital, and slowly, carefully, learned the edges of the world I'd been pulled into. Marco and Vincent became familiar faces. I learned that Dante's driver was named Thomas and had grandchildren he adored. I learned that Friday nights meant business meetings in the penthouse that I wasn't allowed to be near. I learned that Dante took his coffee black, hated small talk, and could speak at least 4 languages fluently. I also learned that people feared him for good reason. I saw Marco return one night with blood on his knuckles, heard phone calls that ended with quiet promises that made my skin crawl, watched Dante's face turn cold as ice when someone crossed him, and understood that the gentleness he showed me was a choice, not his nature. But I also saw other things: the way he donated anonymously to the children's hospital where Lily stayed, the way he stopped to help an elderly woman with her groceries one day when we were leaving the building, the way he looked at a little boy in the park with something soft and broken in his eyes. He was a monster and a man, and I didn't know which scared me more. 2 months in, something changed between us. I'd made dinner nothing fancy. Just pasta and salad, and Dante had actually sat down to eat it instead of working through the meal like usual. We ate in comfortable silence for a while, and then he said, "Your sister is doing better." I looked up surprised. "You've been keeping track?" "Of course." He took a sip of wine. The new treatment protocol is working. Her numbers are improving. Relief flooded through me so intensely I had to set down my fork. "Thank you," I whispered, "for paying for it." "For? You're earning it," he interrupted. "This isn't charity, Emma. Still. Thank you." He studied me for a moment, then said something that surprised me. "Tell me about your parents." So I did. I told him about my father, who'd been a mechanic and loved classic cars. About my mother, who'd made the world's best empanadas and sung off-key in the shower. About the drunk driver who'd taken them both in an instant and left me and Lily alone in a system that didn't care if we lived or died. When I finished, Dante was quiet. Then he said, "I lost my mother when I was 8. Cancer. My father 3 years later. Heart attack, they said, but it was grief. He loved her too much to live without her." "I'm sorry," I said softly. "My uncle raised me after that, taught me the business, taught me that love is a weakness that gets exploited." He looked at me, and there was something raw in his eyes. He was wrong about some things, right about others. Which ones was he wrong about? I haven't decided yet. After that night, something shifted. Dante started eating dinner with me more often, started asking about my day, my sister, my opinions on things that had nothing to do with work. Started looking at me in a way that made my pulse race and my breath catch. And I started looking back. It was dangerous, stupid. He was my employer, my captor, a criminal who'd built his empire on violence and fear. But when he smiled at something I said, when he touched my hand accidentally while reaching for the salt, when he stood too close and looked at me like I was something precious instead of useful, I forgot all the reasons I should keep my distance. I forgot that falling for Dante Moretti would be the most dangerous thing I'd ever done. And then, 3 months after I'd walked into his world, everything exploded. It started with a name, Julian Cross, Dante's right-hand man, his most trusted advisor, the man who'd been with the Moretti family for 20 years, had seen him a handful of times handsome in a cold way, with silver-streaked dark hair and a smile that never reached his eyes. I didn't like him. Something about him made my skin crawl, though I couldn't explain why. One night, I was cleaning Dante's study after a meeting when I found a phone that had been left behind, hidden between the sofa cushions. It was unlocked, and the last message on the screen made my blood run cold. "Everything is in place. Friday night. Make sure Moretti drinks from the blue bottle. He'll be dead before dessert." My hands shook so badly I almost dropped the phone. Friday. That was tomorrow, and the message had been sent to a number saved under the name JC. Julian Cross. I should have gone straight to Dante, should have shown him the phone and let him handle it, but I was terrified if Julian realized his phone was missing, he'd know someone found it. And if he knew I'd found it, I'd be dead before I could prove anything. So I did something incredibly stupid instead. I took a picture of the message with my own phone, put Julian's phone back exactly where I'd found it, and decided to follow him myself tomorrow night to get proof. Which brought me full circle to standing in Dante's study at 3 in the morning, smelling like smoke and lies, while he looked at me with eyes that could strip flesh from bone. "I'm not lying," I said again, but my voice cracked on the words. Dante moved closer. So close I had to tilt my head back to maintain eye contact. "Emma, I followed you tonight." My heart stopped. "What?" "I've been following you for 2 weeks, he said quietly. "Every time you leave your room in the middle of the night. Every time you think you're being careful and quiet. I know you found Julian's phone. I know you've been tracking him. I know what you saw tonight." The world tilted. "You knew?" "I've known Julian was planning something for months," Dante said. "I've been gathering evidence, watching his movements, waiting for him to make a mistake big enough that I could move against him without starting a war." He reached out slowly, giving me time to pull away, and tucked a strand of hair behind my ear. "And then you brave, stupid, beautiful, you decided to conduct your own investigation. Do you have any idea how dangerous that was?" "I had to," I whispered. "I couldn't let him kill you." "So you followed him to a warehouse on the docks, watched him meet with the Volkov family, took pictures with your phone." His thumb traced my cheekbone. "And then, when one of his men spotted you, You set a distraction fire in the parking lot and barely made it out alive. Tears burned in my eyes. I couldn't let him kill you, I repeated. I couldn't. Why not? Dante's voice was rough, urgent. Why risk yourself for a monster like me? Because I loved him. The realization hit me like a freight train. I loved this dangerous, damaged man who treated me like I mattered, who paid for my sister's medical care and asked about my dreams and looked at me like I was the only real thing in his world of shadows. Because you're not a monster, I said. Not to me. For a long moment, we just stared at each other. Then Dante pulled me against him, one hand tangling in my hair, and kissed me like I was air, and he'd been drowning. It was fierce and desperate and achingly gentle all at once. I could feel his heart hammering against mine, feel the tremor in his hands as they cradled my face. When we finally broke apart, we were both breathing hard. You brilliant, reckless girl, he murmured against my forehead. You could have died tonight. But I didn't. I gripped his shirt. And now you have proof. The pictures. Marco already has them, Dante said. I had him following you too, to keep you safe. He saw everything you saw and more. Julian's going to wish he'd never been born by the time I'm done with him. What are you going to do? End this. His voice went cold, but first, you're going to promise me something. Never put yourself in danger like that again. If you have information, you come to me. If you're scared, you come to me. If there's a threat, you let me handle it. He pulled back to look at me, and his eyes were burning. Because I cannot do what I do, be what I am, if I'm worried about you getting yourself killed trying to save me. Do you understand? I understood. And I also understood what he wasn't saying, that he cared, that I mattered, that somewhere in the last 3 months this thing between us had become real. I promise, I whispered. Good. He kissed me again, softer this time. When he pulled away, he said, Now go to bed. Tomorrow's going to be complicated. He wasn't wrong. The next day unfolded like a carefully choreographed dance of power and violence. Dante called a meeting with all his top people, including Julian, who walked in smiling and unsuspecting. I watched from the security room with Marco, my hands clenched into fists, as Dante played Julian's own recorded conversations on the big screen. Proof of betrayal, proof of planned murder, proof of deals with the Volkov family that would have destroyed the Morettis from within. Julian tried to run. He didn't make it to the door. I won't describe what happened next. Some things are too dark to put into words. But when it was over, Julian Cross was gone. His co-conspirators were dealt with. And Dante's empire was secure, and I understood, finally, the full weight of the world I'd chosen to enter. That night, Dante found me on the penthouse balcony, staring out at the city. He didn't say anything, just stood beside me, close enough that our shoulders touched. Are you afraid of me now? He asked after a while. I thought about lying, about giving him the answer he probably expected, but I'd promised him honesty, so I said, a little, but no more than before. I looked up at him. You did what you had to do. I understand that. Most people wouldn't. I'm not most people. I took his hand, lacing our fingers together, and neither are you. He looked down at our joined hands like they were something miraculous. I'm going to clear your debt, he said quietly. All of it. You're free to go whenever you want. My heart clenched. What if I don't want to go? Emma. He turned to face me fully. I'm not a good man. I never will be. The things I do, the life I live, it's dark. Dangerous. There's no happy ending here. Maybe not, I agreed. But there's this, right now, and that's enough for me. I stepped closer, rising on my toes to kiss him softly. Unless you want me to leave? Never. The word came out fierce, possessive. He pulled me against him, buried his face in my hair. Stay, please. For as long as you can stand it, stay. So I did. The weeks that followed were both easier and harder than before. Easier because I wasn't a servant anymore. I was something else. Something undefined and precious. Dante treated me like a partner, consulting me on decisions, protecting me fiercely, showing me parts of himself he kept hidden from the world. Harder because I now fully understood what it meant to love a man like him. The sleepless nights when he had to handle business, the security everywhere we went, the constant awareness that people would use me to hurt him if they could. But we figured it out. Slowly, carefully, we built something real in the spaces between his darkness and my light. Lily got better. The doctors declared her in remission. And when I brought her to meet Dante, he was awkward and gentle in equal measure. He set up a trust fund for her education without telling me. When I found out and confronted him, he just shrugged and said, "She's your family. That makes her mine too." I cried for an hour after that, 6 months after that first night when I tried to save a stranger. Dante took me back to the spot where it had all begun, the hallway, outside his private elevator, where I'd first opened my stupid, reckless mouth. "I've been thinking about what you said," he told me, "about asking you again in a few months if I was helping or hurting you." And? My heart was in my throat. "I'm still not sure," he admitted. "I pulled you into darkness, put you in danger, changed your whole life." He took both my hands. "But I also can't imagine my life without you in it anymore. You make the darkness bearable, Emma. You make me want to be better than I am." "You're already better than you think," I said softly. "Only because you make me want to try." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. "I'm not asking you to marry me, not yet. That wouldn't be fair when you still have so many choices ahead of you. But I'm asking you to stay, to build this life with me, however it looks, to be mine and let me be yours, for as long as it works." He opened the box. Inside was a ring, not an engagement ring, but a promise. A delicate band with a small diamond that caught the light. "What do you say?" he asked. I looked at this beautiful, broken man who'd saved me while I was saving him, who'd given me safety and purpose and a love I'd never imagined possible. And I knew that whatever came next, danger, darkness, or light, I wanted to face it with him. "Yes," I said, 1,000 times yes. When he slipped the ring onto my finger and kissed me in that same hallway where our story began, I felt something click into place. This wasn't a fairy tale. It wasn't a traditional happy ending, but it was ours, messy and complicated and real. And for the girl who'd once been nobody, drowning in a city that didn't care, that was everything.